as well.
Oh, don't forget to put the Luke's name on that too.
Yes, please sign that for
John and Michelle.
We're also going to be passing around a card for the proctors, and we will take the last, anybody who wants to donate to that fund today.
Today's the
And then
last day.
today's the last day, and then we will put that into the form of a love offering for them based on what Sprecher had shared with us. So anyway, that's coming to conclusion for the proctors this week.
All right. So
Wow, man.
I just heard about last night.
You hear about,
did you?
they got,
yeah,
Yeah.
tough.
Didn't know that part.
yeah, his,
Yeah. Okay. So the Essentials Closet competition results. Yeah.
Did
he's
we
like,
win?
no, don't think I'm letting that go.
and you see? Did you get one of these? I don't. Did you get one of these?
No.
Just one of these?
Well, see, you know, when I'll explain why I'm okay and that you guys are bad. No, I'm just kidding. Watch me get my judgment on.
You want to step over here?
Yeah.
Stop moving closer.
Yeah, like if God hits me with a lightning beam, he's going to have bad aim.
Like, what is she doing? Yeah, take me a minute. I'm a little slow. So that's
Yeah.
not-
So, they're rubbing it in our face because the life group won.
Castillo.
Castillo. How do you say that?
Castillo. Double L makes a Y sound.
Anyway, they won. We didn't.
Helps when they do something.
As did the Flowers Life group. So apparently they.
We suck.
But
That's
I have
okay.
an idea for
We're gonna
the
fix that.
acts of service for us.
No, you can't take this up.
Like, consider. Oh. Anyway, so that's their treat and prize. Scholarship bake sale, March 3rd and 10th during fellowship time. Apparently there's going to be yummy treats to purchase.
Today
All
the
proceeds
17th.
will go towards scholarship for camps, training, and retreats for kids, teens, and adults. Hello.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Atkins.
Where's my bag, Jim?
All right, I thought I had the same ringtone.
Sounds familiar,
And
right?
registration opens next week for bakers, setup and cleanup, and helpers at the bake sale.
So is this us redeeming ourselves by baking for the bake sale?
We could do that.
Open up macaroni.
Yes, all of those are so yummy. Oh my word, oh my word. They are the best. You had your hand raised, Anthony.
No.
Right, so good baker. Bake some gluten-free stuff.
Ladies Bunko Night is Saturday the 23rd, 6 to 8:30. Who's going?
Here we go.
You're not going? You can't go?
No,
That's so sad.
Chloe wanted to celebrate her birthday at Grandma's house.
Aww.
So you drop her off and you go.
I remember those days. That was so bad. Going to Grandma's house for my birthday.
Anyway, so that family promise is February 24th through March 3rd. So if you can host or provide or serve a hot meal or transportation, we still need some volunteers. So contact John or Dee Sutton or Jeannie Scudder.
That should be our act of service. We should all pitch in as a life group and serve the food and maybe play some games with the families that are there that week.
That's a great idea. There's a couple other ideas I think that we're going to pitch, and we're going to talk about at the end of the class, so keep that right there so you don't lose it.
That's why I blurted it out, because I'll forget.
Yeah, get it out now, and then collectively we'll remember it. That's what I'm like when they do the life group challenge, like, oh yeah, we're going to do 4 weeks. I'm like, great, because I need 3 weeks to remember and the 4th week to act. Now you cut it down to 2, and I totally forgot. So we have quarterly team huddle today, so the last 15, 20 minutes of class, we're going to go over that. 3 fellowships, active service, which means we have to power through because we've got 2 chapters to cover today, 40 and 41, 40 short, 41's long. But first off, in an effort to satisfy Jeff's need for good jokes, I'm going to try some more dad jokes today.
So we can blame him for that?
Yeah, you can blame him. The other night, this is a true story, 1:30 in the morning, can't sleep. 1 o'clock in the morning, can't sleep. My son messages me. He's like, Dad, I want some advice on, like, you know, how to relate with my girlfriend better. And I was like, cool. So we chatted a little bit. And I said, well, let's get together, you know, later and we'll, you know, talk about it. He says, great, I'll call you later. And I said, nah, I'd prefer you call me Dad.
So bad.
That's pretty bad.
Was it?
Yeah, you gotta raise your hand.
All right, we're bringing it up now. Fun fact with Teacher Rob. About 5,000 years ago in Britain during the Bronze Age, the first shovel was invented. They actually used the scapula, the shoulder blades from an ox, to shovel. Groundbreaking invention. No? Do you know that? It's not bad.
Explain that joke just now.
Yeah. So you see, would dig with it. Before that, they'd take a stick with a fire burnt in because it was harder, like carbon. They would use that to poke the ground. No, it's true, actually. Did you know 5 out of 4 people bad with fractions?
4 people, I get it. All right, sorry. It's a little slow. Apparently I'm bad with fractions.
There's the 5th out of 4.
Here's the thing. You can see it hit everybody, and then here it comes over Nathan and Jessica.
Yeah.
I picked it up right away.
We all stop and pause.
Wait, and there it is.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a smart.
Guy in a wheelchair stole my camouflage jacket, and I was like, "Look, you can hide, but you can't run." Is that bad? I was questioning it the whole time.
We just lost 1 million followers.
Feel bad. Don't start. Apparently, I need prayer. Fun facts with Teacher Rob. We have a theme today like we did last week, and I'll bet you'll figure it out very quickly. First people group to develop the 24-hour clock. Who did it? The 24-hour clock. First people group. Egyptians.
They were the same ones that did the 365.
First to develop the 365-year calendar because they used it to calculate the flooding of the Nile, which they thought the flooding of the Nile was caused by the goddess Isis, who was sad when people died. It's goofy Romans and all these weird cultures. The first pharaoh of Egypt, King Menes, M-E-N-E-S. Any guesses on how he died? First pharaoh, right? Obviously, he's got to be like, he's come to power, right? He's the first one to create structure over Egypt and all that. He's the first pharaoh. Guy's got to be powerful, right? How's he going to die? It's got to be something major. Any guesses? He was run over by a hippo. Kid you not, got trampled, died. Yep. The glass pyramid in front of the Louvre, the art gallery in Mornesford, Paris, France, is erected in monument to the Egyptian pyramids. Do you know that? Because of all the art and culture that comes out of that area. Isn't that super fancy? Here's kind of an oddball one, a little bit. Egyptian cities that were thriving would tend to either worship a god or a goddess kind of their choice, which isn't too far off of how we deal with sports teams. It's like the more thriving your city, you have a sports teams, and everybody's like, yay! So, like, have we changed that much? I don't know. All right. Well, you're all stuck with me. So, we're in Genesis 40 and 41. Let's start right off in Genesis 40. I'm going to take over the mouse for a second here and dump a few of these windows that we don't need. Oops, I'm fighting you, aren't I, Derek?
No, I was just turning off that little ad.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you for that. So Genesis 40, we have to get through this kind of quickly because we have a little bit of, well, we're ahead of time though too. So Genesis 40, we're going to jump in. Somebody's going to read for me, and I'm going to take it on verse by verse as we typically do to break it down for a good understanding. So if somebody would volunteer to read, and starting in chapter 40, and let me know what your translation is so I can, or Derek can, one of us can, account for that on the board. And thanks to Derek in the booth again. Appreciate you, brother.
I got NASB.
NASB? New American Standard Bible version. Awesome. Yeah, it's an interesting day today for some reason. Everybody feel it in the air? A little bit? Yeah. Something going on. Yeah. Don't start with me. Just kidding. So let's start off right off the hop with a quick backstory. Where are we at with regard to Joseph, right? Joseph and the coat of many colors. What was the problem with Joseph's coat of many colors? What was the problematic thing about him having it? Anybody remember? Brothers were jealous. What was that?
An item kind of above his station.
Way above his station, right? Came all the way down here, all the way down here. A man of the field doesn't wear that. That's not conducive to tending flocks and all that kind of stuff. You need it up short on the elbow because you're going to be anointing sheep a lot of times. Remember, we're anointing. That actually comes from shepherds looking over their sheep. 3 reasons to anoint your sheep with oil. Remember what? Anybody know? 1, to get the pests out of the face. Number 2?
So they don't get stuck.
So what's that?
So they don't get stuck.
Yeah, that's a twofold one. Once they don't get stuck in briars and brambles, and number two, when they butt heads, they glance more, get less injury. And the third one, he said bugs first, but you're correct. If you get a cut, help to disinfect or keep stuff out of the cut. So the idea of anointing actually came from shepherds anointing sheep, which is kind of a beautiful picture of how our shepherd anoints us as his sheep. So that's really cool. So Joseph would need a short, for having it long like that, it'd make a mess of everything. It made no sense. So he gets sold into slavery, finds his way into Potiphar's house. Potiphar is the captain of the Magi, which is Pharaoh's bodyguards, or anybody who's actually involved in any pharaonic interests, or anything that Pharaoh has interest in. Kind of like the Secret Service, how they protect the president, but they also like investigate counterfeit fraud and counterfeit money. Same idea, big people group. These guys got power. They're not playing around. And now he's been accused by Potiphar's wife, right? He runs out. She's got his garment. Potiphar gets mad. She makes fun of Potiphar effectively, or kind of throws him on the spot. This is your Hebrew slave, right? So immediately class descending him, slave descending him like that, ethnically descending him. She's like, you brought him in here to make fun of us. What are you going to do about it? He's on the spot. There's no evidence to prove necessarily either way other than her word, and she's got the garment. So what are you going to do? You go with what you see. So now Joseph's in jail. He's in prison. He's in the captain of the guards prison, right? He's not in general population. He's in Club Med, sort of. And we're going to jump into that here in verse 1. But I want to start real quick by letting you know that we serve an active and loving God. You guys know that? It's easy to talk about. Anybody ever? I mean, I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you. If you want to see an active God in your life, I can tell you one way to do it. Start a business, claim Christ as the center of it, risk everything on it, and start praying. You will see God move. I can promise you that. I have been through it. I have seen it. But not everybody here is necessarily called to start your own business and like risk everything like that. If you've got a family and you've got a vocation and a job, you should take care of your family, of course. We need to provide for them. But what I would ask you to do is think about something you're willing to risk and pray to God that you want so bad that you will risk it, but you clearly don't want to lose it. And you don't want to lose it so bad you're willing to pray like you haven't prayed before over it. How about risking your discomfort, reaching out and creating a friendship? I had a friend of mine who did that to me recently. He reached out, passed his discomfort, and made a friendship with me. And it took more than a couple of days to do it. And it was collaborative with some other people that I'm living life with. And so that friend came over yesterday, and we did something friendly together. And I was going to do drywall on my house and do my mud and tape, but it was more important to me to develop my friendship because I was reaching past what I wanted to do on my own, which is my own self-seeking interest, is to do what I wanted to do and get my project done. But what was the better? The better was investing in friendship. The better was taking a risk that maybe I'm not going to be the best friend ever. And so that friend came over, and we turned on the wood lathe a little snowman. And the whole time, I was really struggling with the stupid song from Frozen, do you want to make a snowman? And I didn't say it. I was good.
See, that's a good answer.
It was not bad, right? Make a snowman. I just made a snowman. So, I would, when it comes, and you know that this is, right? Keith has talked about this last week. He's pushing us into fellowship in a proper, community within fellow believers and equally yoked friendships and things like that, which means you're going to have to step out and make friendships and shake a hand that you don't want to shake. And I'm talking to the choir right now, or preaching to the choir right now, because when it was 4 minutes and go say hi to somebody, I'm like, what's up, baby? How you doing? I love you so much. You're great. What? You want to eat lunch later? I'm like anything to give an excuse for somebody to not want to reach out to me too. And so, we have to take those steps out there because if we look at how the early church lived, that's how we're called to live. It's how it works. Not the exact same way, but all of the same categorical type stuffs. We want to do that same thing. Meet together, break bread, eat together, share life, pray over each other. This week I had a major problem. I had a major inconvenience that was going to be very, very costly. And because I had some good people come around me and pray over me, I was able to come to conclusion on that problem, and it really worked out great. It was God's hand in it. It was so clear. Risk something. Or don't be judged by me. First one, who's going to read? Jeff? Get after it. NASB.
You gotta change it.
Oh, it's NIV, yeah, sorry. In the New American Spicy Version. My favorite. Oh, Spicy Bible. Yeah, sorry. There it is. In ASB. Some of these stories are actually worth reading in a couple of different translations because some of the words are slightly different, but they give us a real difference because our English language is really kind of tiny, to be honest. And so different words used just the right way in the right context can help us to get it. Where we have, one word for love. I love ice cream and I love my wife, but they're clearly different. I don't love ice cream, I like it. Same idea. So Jeff, go ahead, please. That's enough of me talking.
Then it came about after these things, the cupbearer and the baker for the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was furious with his two officials, the cupbearer and the chief baker. So he put them in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, in the jail, the same place where Joseph was in prison.
All right, hold there. So, okay, it's time for me to talk again. As if you don't hear enough of me. Some interesting backstory on this. The chief cupbearer also would be basically the butler, another name for it, or the wine bearer. He was the guy that did that. They're both in jail. They're both in the captain of the bodyguard's jail. What do bodyguards do? They guard bodies. It's right in the name, right? Tells you right there. Make sure this guy doesn't die. So if you got two people in Pharaoh's prison, captain of the bodyguard, what are these two prisoners likely accused of?
Not guarding the body.
No, these guys aren't Magi. They're captured by the Magi. On the other side, trying to kill him. Probably a plot to kill him. What would be the easiest way for a baker or a wine bearer? Poison. Probably in jail on suspicion of charges of killing Pharaoh, trying to kill Pharaoh. Okay. I know this is going to sound like I'm digging into the tiny bits, but trust me on this, I'm going somewhere. Verse 4.
The captain of the bodyguard put Joseph in charge of them, and he took care of them, and they were in confinement for some time.
Hold on a second. Captain of the bodyguard put... Who's the captain? What did Potiphar in jail? Now what is he doing? Put him in charge of prisoners. I thought this guy was just accused of alleged assault against Potiphar's wife. Potiphar, captain of the bodyguard, chapter 39, verse 1 tells us Potiphar was captain of the bodyguard. We know that. We're not guessing. This is known. Puts him in charge of the rest of the prisoners. What does that say about Potiphar, and what does it say about Joseph? Let me hear some insight.
Potiphar understands that God's with Joseph.
He knows that God's with Joseph. That's clear.
So maybe that's why. I don't think Potiphar believes his wife at all.
Bam.
So that was where I was thinking.
That's the bullseye. I bet you darn well he knows the wife is telling a story, but he's in a bad spot because she's got evidence. She's got his garment. He's run out of the house. There's nobody there as a witness. The people outside of the house see him running out in effectively nothing, maybe a loincloth, maybe less. What are you going to do? That's the only evidence you got. But he probably doesn't believe it. Now, on the flip side, what does that say about Joseph?
He's very trustworthy.
Potiphar knows it. Chapter 39, 4 times it says the Lord was with Joseph. Remember the literary thing that the Bible uses whenever it wants to try to get something into our heads? Repeats it, especially in Hebrew, especially in the Greek. Repeats it. If it's important, you're going to hear it. You ever do that with your kids? Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, you got to get in their head. Stop it. You're going to get burned or whatever, you know? So there's a lot of backstory going on here that we can just breeze right. Let's go in verse 5 then. Thank you very much. Oh, one other thing. I'm sorry real quick. What did Joseph do? Yeah. Joseph took charge of them, and what did Joseph do?
He looked after them.
He looked after them. If you're bitter, if you're angry, if you're scorned, if you feel like God's abandoned you, probably the last thing on your mind is not somebody else's concerns who you believe are jailed appropriately for the fact of effective treason. But he's actually got a right heart attitude. Even though you could argue Joseph has been through the ringer. Remember we talked about electrical signals? Yeah, that's on Jeff. Sawtooth pattern. I drew it wrong last week because I actually did a negative time gradient. You can't do that. This is electrical geek speak. Sorry. Just don't you start with me. So Joseph, 17 years old, right? He tells his brothers, hey, you guys are going to bow down to me. And they're like, that sounds terrific. No, they didn't like that. And then he's like, hey, I got another dream. And they're like, tell us more. You and Mom and Dad are going to bow down to me. And they're like that. They're super understanding of that. They're like, that sounds great. No. And so, boom, he's rising up. He's given this coat of many colors. It's totally the wrong thing to do. Jacob is favoring him in the wrong way, left, right, and center, and bam, sold into slavery. 11 years later, he's in Potiphar's care. He's growing up in the house, right? He's starting to become administratively knowledgeable. 11 years, more than a decade, he's in Potiphar's house running it. It says Potiphar cared about nothing except for
What it was going to eat.
what he was going to eat. Could you imagine that if you had staff members that took care of your business so well that all you had to do was like, what time am I going to Jersey Mike's?
Yeah.
Number 15, right? Love the meatball. 10 years later, he's in Potiphar's house. He's rising to authority. He's second in command of somebody who runs a pretty big outfit, right? This is like the leader of the NSA. This is just like some 10-dude group who's trying to make sure Pharaoh doesn't get stabbed. This is huge. This is across the entirety of Egypt that these guys have authority. Anything that Pharaoh's concerned about, they can step into. Bam, Potiphar's wife accuses him, wham, back in prison. 2 years in, and we're already seeing problems for Joseph, which we're going to read back in a minute. Joseph's rise and fall, rise and fall. And what does he do 2 years in when, again, Potiphar now is putting him back in charge of the prison? He could be like, run it yourself. Run it yourself, Potiphar. You didn't believe me in the first place. You saw what I did. You saw the Lord was with me. Run the prison yourself. But no, he steps into the authority that he's been given. And he does it with kindness. He actually looks for them. Kid you not, I'm going to let you read verse 5. Please go ahead.
Then the cupbearer and the baker for the king of Egypt, who were confined in jail, both had a dream the same night, each man with his own dream, each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning and observed them, behold, they were dejected.
Hold there for a second. What did Joseph do? He did what? It's an adjective here. Or, I'm sorry. It's a verb. Jeez Louise. I went to school, I promise you. He observed them. That means he paid attention. Again, it shows that he's caring. Given his rise and fall, and again, all of this is not stuff that he's really overtly done. Yeah, should he have maybe been more tactful with his brothers regarding the dreams? Sure. Maybe he should have said, Dad, maybe the best thing, you're going to pit me against my brothers. You know, maybe Potiphar's...
He was also 17.
Yeah, exactly. 17, who got it all together at 17? Yeah, I'm like, Dad gave this to me. He's the leader of the house.
Yeah, so these dreams must mean, you know.
Right, I mean, that's a good point. That's an excellent point. You want to teach next week? Think about it.
You're doing great.
Yeah.
You're doing fantastic.
Yeah, but I could see double great. Yeah, ooh, I'm starting to get so yeah, I mean, Joseph isn't his own doing. Yeah, maybe he could have done better, maybe a little bit smarter, but at the same time, like I said, his circumstances indicated to him that maybe he was on like this meteoric rise and I'll just ride the wave. But certainly Potiphar's wife making a false accusation was not that. Boy, that'd be super easy just to get burned. Super easy to get burned. I mean, somebody cuts me off in traffic and I'm about ready to light the world on fire. You know, you're like, calm down. But he stays right, and what does he do? He observes. And behold, they were dejected. Keep going, please, Jeff.
He asked Pharaoh's officials who were with him in confinement in his master's house, "Why are your faces so sad today?" Then they said to him, "We have had a dream, and there is no one to interpret it." Then Joseph said to them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell it to me, please." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream, behold, there was a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. And as it was budding, its blossoms came out, and its clusters produced ripe grapes. Now Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, so I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup."
Hold on a second. You know what sound grapes make when you squeeze them? They just let out a little wine. You weren't thinking about it.
That was terrible.
Okay. Okay.
That's why I was late.
Yeah. Sorry, buddy. I'm sneaking them in. You just get to deal with it. Oh, we have a guest. Oh, hello there, Mrs. Channel. Yeah, awesome. Yeah. That was godly timing right there. That is godly timing. Where are we at? Yeah, the wine, the grapes laid out a little wine. Interrupting God's word for bad dad jokes. That might be judgment. Keep going, please.
So I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. Then Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. And you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hand according to your former custom. when you were his cupbearer.
Hold on for a second there. What's Joseph's interpretation of the dream, or God's interpretation revealed to Joseph? What's the very first thing he says?
3 days.
Branches are 3 days. That is measurable. You can measure days, can you not?
Yeah.
Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset. Joseph is making a line in the sand, and he is saying in 3 days, this will or this will happen. It puts him in a position where his reputation is on the line, and he can be judged as to whether or not he's accurate or inaccurate with God's revelation. That's a little dangerous, to be honest. You better be darn serious about what you're about to reveal as God's will or God's interpretation. That's why I'm always very cautious about anybody who will come to you and just tell you, like, you know what God tells me he's got for you, Ryan? He tells me that those ribs you make need to come to my house more frequently. That's God's will. I know it. Yeah, and I'm going to give you 3 days to get it done. Ryan makes great ribs for those of you that don't know. So he makes a lot of other good stuff too, actually. That bread, yeah, skilled. So he's got a line in the sand there. He says 3 days, this is going to happen. He doesn't say maybe or an approximately or we'll see what it could be. Or if in God's will it still is. He states it impunitively. In 3 days, this is going to go down. That puts him in a place where he's either going to be judged as being accurate or inaccurate. You're either a man of God and as it is or it's not. Now, a lot of people are seeing God suffer and shortly Pharaoh. So yeah, that's pretty bold in my opinion. But that shows kind of the boldness. Like I said, don't mumble, speak truly, speak accurately, speak honestly, but be humble. Remember, what does he say about the interpretations? Who do they belong to? They belong to God. Not to me, not to look at me, not to who am I, not to all this. They belong to God. He still has a certain amount of humility in him, which is awesome.
But he interprets it anyway?
He what's that?
But he interprets it. Gosh, why can I not say that word?
Interprets it.
He says it's God's, but then he tries to tell him what it means anyway.
No, they're telling him, so Joseph's telling him, don't try to interpret it. Tell me instead, because God is with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's viewing that as the ability to interpret.
God's the interpreter. Joseph's like, I'm going to be a vessel. I'm going to give you what God has, not what I have. Here's what God has for you. That's the point of the drawing it in the sand. When it comes from God, you can put your bank on it, you know. That's why Joseph can be so bold about that. That's why he can put a line in the sand and say, in 3 days, this is going to happen. Because if it doesn't happen, then what?
Joseph got egg on his face.
Yeah, and people aren't going to think that God's with him necessarily. Or who knows? Or maybe the guy gets angry at him. Or maybe there's a little, prison shank going on. I don't know. I haven't spent much time in prison, so I don't know. Yeah, keep going, Jeff. Thank you.
Only keep in mind when it goes well with you, and please do me a kindness by mentioning me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. For I was in fact kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing that they should have put me into the dungeon.
Yeah, so I mean, he's even calling out the fact he recognizes that where he is not by his own actions. Like he's not deservedly in jail. All right, keep going. We got to get through 40. Thank you, Jeff. You're doing awesome.
When the king saw that he had interpreted favorably, he said to Joseph, I also saw in my dream, and behold, there were 3 baskets of wine. And in the top basket there were some of all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, and the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. Then Joseph answered and said, this is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and will hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh off you.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
That's pleasant.
Yeah. The great thing about Joseph, though, is he's not scared to share the good message and the not maybe so desirable message. He tells the cupbearer, you're going to be fine, don't worry about it. And he tells the baker, yeah, you're in trouble, brother. And I mean, that's not a good way to die. When you get hanged and the birds come and pick your flesh, that means that you are put on display for everybody to see so that they understand what you've done and that your family cannot take you down and then put you into the tomb or into the whatever. We read about that previously. Oh, what was that? Samuel, I think it was, where she lays her 60 days to make sure that the body isn't, with the bird. This is a disgraceful way to die. I mean, this is not an awesome thing. This is, not death on a cross, but it's getting close. Yeah, the baker's excited about that. He's like, wow, great. This next 3 days is going to be really fun-filled. I can't wait to see what happens. Yeah, I hope maybe you're just slightly off on that, and maybe you got me and the cupbearer backward. I don't know. Let's go. Yeah, actually, my dream went like this. I think I got it wrong. I'm going to tell you more. So, yeah, I mean, Joseph, it's like let your yes be your yes and a no be the no. He straight up tells him how it is, right? Don't mumble. Say how it is. Even when it's hard. You think that was easy to tell the baker? I mean, I don't know, maybe he's just a baker, but still. Is it? Well, I mean, he's not like a butcher where he's like skilled with like knives or something. I don't know. That'd be a little scary. Yeah, just a baker. Was that judgment? It was. I'm sorry. I love baked goods too, so who am I to talk? Okay, keep going. Let's finish out 40, please.
Thus it came about on the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his office, and he put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him.
Well, thanks a lot, Chief Cupbearer. That's all he asked for, remember? Like, hey, I'll give you this interpretation if you give me, like, half your daily rations in jail or whatever like that. No, it's just like, hey, just remember me when you get restored. Remember me. And he does. He does remember him 2 years later. Just 2 years. I mean, what's 2 years in the ancient time? It was really easy to survive day by day. 2 years goes by fast. Yeah, especially in prison, No disease or anything like that to worry about. The commentary in Enduring Word, for those of you who don't follow Enduring Word commentary, I strongly advise you if you want to know about it. If you don't want to know about it, just continue to not know about it. But I recommend it. Parallels between Joseph and Jesus, and there are a lot. I'm just going to touch on a couple here because I like the commentary. An innocent man came into our prison and shared our condition. Talking about Joseph. Kind of talks about Jesus, right? Our prison of sin. An innocent man. Joseph was innocent. He wasn't sinless, but he was innocent. Jesus was sinless. An innocent prisoner revealed God's message to us. An innocent prisoner was proved true in 3 days. Interesting. Joseph shows us Jesus, whose message from God brings life or death. If you're looking for a message from God, look to Jesus. I think it's... I got to find it. I'm jumping ahead in my notes. Deuteronomy 19:15 is going to tell us some stuff about how to know where to get our answers from. But I'll tell you right now, I'll give you the shortcut. Jesus commands. How do we know how much of the Old Testament applies to us? Because Jesus commands usurps it. He'll say in the Bible, he'll say some commands right there. He'll say like, hey, it's been, you've heard it told to you, or it was written this, but I tell you, it's this. In other words, it was written this, but you kind of missed it. You didn't get the heart of it. So I'm going to tell you the heart of it. I'm going to tell you how to get it. You're curious about how to live your life, what to do with it? Jesus' commands will tell you. It's all right here. It's a simple book, $14.99. Go to Barnes & Noble. Don't buy it from Amazon. They didn't pay any tax last year, and I'm irritated. But the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Thanks a million, man. That was really, really awesome of you. Jeff, you did a great job on 40, and we are done with 40. Let's get right into 41, pretty please.
I'll read 41.
Okay, what's your translation? Yours is ESV, right?
Nope.
No. NLT, New Living Translation. Hold on, I got to jump forward a couple. 41. Bam. NLT. I love NLT because it's got like, it's a little spicy language, I think, sometimes.
I like it.
You like it, don't you? Yeah, it's sassy, right? NLT. And click the search button. Chapter 41. Okay, we're ahead of time. That's awesome. So, before we jump into 41, what have we learned from 40? What's the start of 40? What's the end of 40? What happens in the middle of 40? Start of 40 is Joseph's in jail. Wrongly accused.
But God uses him.
Already put into a position of authority. God's with him, right? He has humility in the interpretation of the dreams. He's going to end up being in prison for 2 full years. And he's about to be set on a precipice for action. See you, buddy. Oh, yeah. No, thank you for coming. And so for 11 years. So Joseph is going to be 30 here in a couple of days. It's almost his birthday. Happy birthday, Joseph. 11 years he's been running Potiphar's house, learning how to administrate a large household, arguably administrating partly some of the duties of the Magi, or at least the organization of Potiphar's men to that. He is being set up. He's got through challenges. He's still a slave, don't forget. And through his slavery, he is learning and becoming educated in Egyptian culture, Egyptian ways, and Egyptian language. Whether he realizes it or whether Potiphar realized it or not. This is setting him up. In his trial, in his tribulation, in his challenge, he is being built, grown, and directed toward a future job and purpose. Just because we see God in our present circumstance of uncomfortableness and pain does not mean that's where God expects us to stay. Let's keep going. Chapter 41, Jessica, you said you had that? I'm going to need, actually, I need 1 minute to get prepared here for just a second. I have commentary points. Yeah, enduring word commentary on this is so awesome. There's just a couple here that just blows my mind. So yeah, go ahead and dive in and read all the way through verse 8, if you would.
Oh, you don't even let me get that far.
Maybe.
I didn't scan ahead that
I might sneak in a bad dad joke.
2 full years later, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing at the bank of the Nile River. In his dream, he saw 7 fat, healthy cows come out of the river and begin grazing on the marsh ground. Then he saw 7 more cows come up behind them from the Nile, but these were scrawny. Cows stood beside the fat cows on the riverbank. Then the scrawny, thin cows ate the 7 healthy fat cows. At this point in the dream, Pharaoh woke up.
Hands at me? No, she threw a pin at me because apparently I didn't have the right board up.
Oh,
Yeah.
Pause.
Don't get used to it.
But he fell asleep again and had a second dream. This time he saw 7 heads of grain, plump and beautiful, growing on a single stalk. Then 7 more heads of grain appeared, but these were shriveled and withered by the east wind. And these thin heads swallowed up 7 plump, well-formed heads. Then Pharaoh woke up again and realized it was a dream.
Okay, so hold for a second there. Just for a second. Pharaoh woke up and realized, what?
A dream.
It was a dream. Doesn't say vision, says dream. Keep going through 8.
Okay. The next morning, Pharaoh was very disturbed by the dreams. So he called for all of the magicians and wise men of Egypt. When Pharaoh told them his dreams, not one of them could tell him what they meant.
And pause there. So we've got 2 dreams that are very interesting. And then Pharaoh wakes up, and what is he? He's so totally, what does it say? He was totally comforted by the dreams. No, not comforted. Fanciful dream where you wake up. You ever have a dream where, like, in the dream it seems so real, and you wake up and you're like, thank goodness that was a dream. You know, wake up like you feel like you dream like you're late to an interview or something like that. You wake up, you're like, thank goodness that was a dream. Pharaoh's not like, thank goodness this is a dream. Pharaoh's like, I got a problem now. I got these 2 dreams. They don't make any sense to me. Like he is disturbed, it says. Not like borderline bothered or woke up confused. He is disturbed. Some translations say upset in his spirit. This is upsetting type thing that God's put on him. So I think Pharaoh gets. The commentary covers this. I won't blow through it, but I think I'm going to hold off. There's just a lot of backdrop to the function of the dream and certain things that are kind of imagery awakening, and you can pull back to earlier parts of Old Testament. And there's a lot of interaction to that. I'm not going to necessarily touch on it, but I would encourage you to consider looking at it yourselves as time goes by. But we also have to be careful, too, to realize that this is before God's written word, right? This is before Torah. This is before 10 Commandments. This is before New Testament. This is before Paul. We are post that, right? We have the canonized Bible. We have the Old Testament. We have the New Testament. We have the commands of Jesus. We have all these things, right? It's all after that. This is before that. God speaks to us today through his word. He may use supernatural powers and means and things, even crazy things, to what we would consider normal. But God speaks to us through his word primarily. God who at various times, quote, God who at various times, in various ways, spoke in past to the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by his Son. We are in the last days. God speaks to us through his Son. It isn't to say that God wouldn't reveal himself in an image or in a vision. He's a sovereign God. He can do what he wants. But more than likely, you are going to experience God through, at least as far as his direction goes, his revelation, through his word. That's what Hebrews tells us. That's how you're going to experience God. If you're looking for crazy signs and wonders, or you're throwing stuff out there like that, I would caution you to be putting God to show up in a way that he said he won't, or typically doesn't. More commonly shows up this way. That's why we should be in the word daily. If you're not in the word daily, you're not going to see the revelation. No offense, I'm not here to judge anybody and tell you you're wrong. I mean, I'm looking in the mirror here. I'm not in the Bible as often as I need to be. It's one of the reasons I chose to teach this class, is because I know that it's going to cause me to be in Bible more frequently. It's going to cause me to be accountable to you guys, that when I show up here, I bring some value, hopefully, and not bad dad jokes. Although anybody feel free to take those with you. Pharaoh realizes the nature of these dreams aren't just odd, but gravely impactful to him in Egypt. Let's find out what happens. Jessica, you mind keep going? You're doing terrific. Verse 9.
Finally, the king's chief cupbearer spoke up. Today I have been reminded of my failure, he told Pharaoh. Some time ago, you were angry with the chief baker. You imprisoned us in the palace of the captain of guard. One night, the chief baker and I each had a dream, and each dream had its own meaning. There was a young Hebrew man with us in prison who was a slave of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he told us what each of our dreams meant. And everything happened just as he predicted. I was restored to my position as a cupbearer, and the chief baker was executed and impaled on a pole.
Yeah, so the chief baker, if you go back through it, he was actually hung and then impaled on a pole. That's how they did it back in the day. Old Testament was a rowdy time, you know. They didn't have any, like, Xbox to, like, ease their frustration, so they put people on poles, I guess.
Went around stabbing.
Yeah. It's just, you know, I don't get mad, I get stabby. Okay, so this is a little bit dangerous for the cupbearer, because what does he do? He's like, hey, remember that time you wanted to kill me? Remember that time I was, suspected of potential poisoning you? Let's bring that up again to the, single strongest ruler of the whole region, and who answers to no one except, Ra, the sun god. Let me go ahead and remind you about that time. Remember that time? Yeah, you wanted to kill me? Let me bring that up again. So I have a feeling that the cupbearer is feeling convicted because he remembers that Joseph can interpret these dreams. He remembers his dream. He probably remembers his relief of when Joseph said, you're going to be restored to where you were. And all of a sudden he's like, ding, the light bulb comes on. 2 full years later, Joseph's been chilling in prison, living day to day, and the cupbearer's like, oh yeah, that guy. I think he told me about this. Yeah, so a little bit dangerous on his part. But fortunately, what does Pharaoh do? He sent for Joseph at once. Not a few minutes, not next day, not let me think about it. Get this guy up here and right now. Shows the grievousness of Pharaoh's belief on these dreams, that they are real and a dangerous threat to Egypt, and he does not know what to do about it. Keep going.
Pharaoh sent for Joseph at once, and he was quickly brought from the prison. After he shaved and changed his clothes, he went in and stood before Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream last night, and no one here can tell me what it means. But I have heard that when you hear about a dream, you can interpret it. It is beyond my power to do this, Joseph replied. But God can tell you what it means and set you at peace, or at ease.
Look at that right there. Joseph came from prison. What's the first thing, the 2 things they had to do before they could present him before Pharaoh?
Shave and change his clothes.
Shave and change his clothes. So he might be in a high position in the prison. He's still a prisoner. He's still not well kept. He still has dirty, probably torn clothes like that. And yet when he shows up in front of Pharaoh, man, if it was me, you know what the first thing I'd be doing? Like, good thing you called me, Pharaoh. I got your back right now. You're lucky. God's with me. But what does he say? It's beyond my power to do this. Stays humble. Jeez Louise. I wouldn't. I would absolutely leverage my position to be like, I can ease all your fears.
Even after the fact that he sat there for an additional 2 years, and the cupbearer didn't state what he was his promise to do.
Yeah.
I don't think that would have done anything anyway, realistically.
What wouldn't have?
Oh, if the cupbearer right away would have said, hey, Pharaoh, this guy interpreted my dream.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
You had to wait till Pharaoh had a reason, right?
You had to wait for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a good point. So why would the cupbearer bring Joseph out of prison ahead of time without any corroboration why he was wanting him out of there? He's a chief official in Pharaoh's staff, right? And he could have been like, hey, Pharaoh, there's this guy in prison that interpreted my dream about what you were going to do, and he told me ahead of time, and then you did it. You could kind of make the connection, but it's not really impactful to Pharaoh. Like you said, who cares?
Thankful that he just wanted to keep his head down and do his job, but once he heard, because he was so close to Pharaoh, once he heard that he was having a dream and nobody could interpret it, it went, oh, I know somebody that could do that. You know, like he did that for me. So
I think that's something to take away from this, is that when God's in motion, backtrack. In the Christian life, there's a lot of waiting, it seems like to me. But I can tell you this much, when God starts to get working, it's like a torrent, it's like a river flood, it's coming. I don't know how many people are in here are feeling that in this church, but I can tell you I'm seeing it. People I'm in community with are seeing it, and it's coming. There's like a flood of something that's going to happen. I'm not saying it's going to, like, you know, make the entire Northwest a Christian family again, and everybody's going to be on God's green earth, you know, praising Him in the way they should. But I'm saying there's motion. There's something happening. And when there's preparation, when there's been preparation, when there's been growth, when there's been movement, and when it happens, how did Pharaoh call Joseph? Took his time and got to him a week later. Immediately, right now, here, let's talk to him and let's move. And we're going to see continued movement here in just a second. Beyond my power, replied Joseph, but God can tell you what it means and set you at ease. He is still humble. He could even play the other side of the card. He's like, well, I might let you know what it is. You know, I interpreted those two guys' dreams accurately, but I've been rotting here in prison for 2 years, and I don't know if I want to help you, Pharaoh. I'm already in prison. What else are you going to do to me? Execute me? Fine.
or I'll do this for you if you do this for me.
Hold them
Try to
hostage.
barter with him.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
I mean, why? I mean, the human fleshly side of that, that's what I would do. You know, that's that fleshly side. Plus, if you're fearful, like, man, I've been in jail all this time. I'm going to go back to jail. And it's also a little bit nerve-wracking because you better interpret the dream right.
Yeah,
Because if not,
it's a huge burden.
yeah, Pharaoh's not exactly super kind.
But why would you get so hung up on, I guess, being justified when this entire time, for Jacob's sake,
Joseph's sake.
God has been with him this entire time, so it's not like he's been down and out. I mean, yeah, he might have been in prison for an additional 2 years, but it was God's plan.
He's extremely trusting and obedient.
Very trusting. After all, I mean, he's been sold into slavery, right? Brothers sold him into slavery. He's been in Potiphar's house. He's been falsely accused. He's been in jail. He's been forgotten. Now he's suddenly called up to Pharaoh. My attitude wouldn't be like that, so that's pretty cool. All right, let's keep going. 17.
So Pharaoh told Joseph his dream. In my dream, he said, I was standing on the bank of the Nile River, and I saw 7 fat, healthy cows come out of the river and begin grazing in the marsh grass. But then I saw 7 sick-looking cows, scrawny and thin, come up after them. I've never seen such sorry-looking animals in all of the land of Egypt. These thin, scrawny cows ate the 7 fat cows. But afterward, you wouldn't have known it, for they were still thin and scrawny as before. Then I woke up. Then I fell asleep again, and I had another dream. At this time, I saw 7 heads of grain, full and beautiful, growing in a single stalk. Then 7 more heads of grain appeared, but these were blight and shriveled, and weathered from the east wind. And the shriveled heads swallowed the 7 healthy heads. I told these dreams to the magicians, but no one could tell me what they mean.
I don't know why. That makes me laugh. I told it to the magicians like they're going to do a card trick. Here,
Yeah, right.
pick a card. Does that help explain your dream?
Pull out their tarot cards.
Yeah, different magicians, right?
The 7 heads of wheat.
One more verse in 25.
Joseph responded, both of the Pharaoh's dreams mean the same thing. God is telling Pharaoh in advance what he is about to do.
What he's about to do. The 2 dreams are the same thing. Deuteronomy 9:15 tells us, by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, the matter shall be established. If you have 2 or 3 godly, same thing, start praying about that. That's probably accurate. It's probably from God. It's probably in your life. But like the Bible tells us, especially in the New Testament, we're to test everything. So don't take just one person. That's why false doctrine based on one person's statement is really dangerous. It needs to be established by multiple people. It needs to be tested. We don't just take on whatever. You should be checking me, questioning me. If you ever hear me say something that you're not necessarily sure is true, don't hesitate to bring it up, Carl. I mean, just because you got your arms crossed in its body language, No, Carl's great. Yeah, so that was 25. Go ahead, keep going here.
The 7 healthy cows and the 7 healthy heads of grain both represent 7 years of prosperity. The 7 thin, scrawny cows that came up later and the 7 thin heads of grain withered by the east wind represent 7 years of famine.
Mm-hmm.
This will happen just as I have described it, for God has revealed to Pharaoh in advance
One more time, he's drawn a line in the sand. This will happen just as I have described it. That's kind of dangerous because if it doesn't show up just as he's described it, what's the consequence?
Yeah.
Pharaoh could be like, yeah, you could be done. You know, you're giving me false information. You're giving me a story. Especially if after 7 years of plenty, that's a long time for Joseph to be to take advantage of that. Okay, keep going. Thank you.
The next 7 years will be a period of great prosperity throughout the land of Egypt. But afterwards there will be 7 years of famine, so great that all the prosperity will have been forgotten. Famine will destroy the land. Famine will be so severe that even the memory of the good years will be erased.
That's where he's talking about the cows. The skinny cows came up, ate the fat cows, and the skinny cows were still skinny. That's why he's talking about that.
Yeah.
That's the second time he iterates that dream. We get that additional information because the famine is so bad, the skinny cows that ate the fat cows, you don't even remember there was fat cows. There's no evidence they were ever there. Thank you. Keep going.
I like this part.
Yeah.
As for having two similar dreams, it means that these events have been decreed by God, and he will soon make them happen.
Yeah, like right now.
Repetition.
Yeah, exactly, right? If the Bible wants you to get something, if God wants you to get something, what does he do? He repeats it. If you see something repeated in Scripture, you know, your ears should perk up. Pay attention. This is important. Keep going. Thank you.
Therefore, Pharaoh should find an intelligent and wise man and put him in charge of the entire land of Egypt.
This is where I wonder, it's like, maybe you should find somebody who's really smart and like is in touch with God. I don't know.
That you need to do this.
You know, he's pretty humble, so I doubt that's his posture. But
Yeah.
like, I could see me doing that because like I hate sales, but I'm kind of good at it, and I can't stand sales. But I could totally see myself selling myself to Pharaoh. Like, you should probably get somebody who's really knowledgeable, that can, you know, more than the magicians, obviously. I mean, those guys are great, but, you know, somebody who can interpret your dreams, maybe. I don't know. Maybe he's interpreted dreams before accurately. I mean, I'm just guessing here.
Has some experience running things,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Hold on for a second. Let's talk about knowledge and wisdom real quick. Knowledge is knowing of facts. Wisdom is application of facts for the best end of those facts, right? Does Joseph have knowledge about administration within Egyptian culture?
Yes.
Yeah, he's got better than a decade. I mean, this is his resume, right? Decade of service in Potiphar's house, 2 years interpreting dreams in the captain of the guard prison. I mean, like, he's got a good resume here. He's not necessarily selling himself, but Pharaoh's probably putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
You don't rule a nation and stay in charge for any length of time without at least having some ability to kind of discern and or, you know, smell the garbage when it's out there. Go ahead and keep going.
Where was I?
Let's read 33 again just because I love it.
No. Therefore, Pharaoh should find an intelligent and wise man to put in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh should appoint supervisors over the land and let them collect 1/5 of all the crops during the 7 good years.
Typical taxation in Egypt at this time, 10%. 1/5 is 20%. He's going to double taxes. That's what he's telling them. Double taxes. Well, when you have a lot of abundance, that's not necessarily,
A little extra, right?
yeah.
It's like
And especially if they're
higher tax
communicating,
bracket for the higher income people.
especially if they're communicating why they're going to do it, right? But hold on for 1 second because it says, you notice here that now we're not in revelation of the dream anymore. We're not in interpretation of the dream anymore. What's Joseph doing now?
Telling them how to survive it.
He's giving him actual fact, what's that?
Just giving them advice.
Actual factual instruction and advice.
Yeah.
These are good ideas. What was that? Practical things. This is a good idea. This is how we sustain it. 11 years of running a household. Joseph's getting it. And Pharaoh's going to ask him because he's got a certain amount of, even Pharaoh has a certain amount of humility to Joseph. We're going to see that in just a second. Go ahead and keep going.
And what's the purpose of him taxing 20%?
We're going to find out. I know.
Have
Good
them
job for
gather
being
all
ahead
the
of it.
food produced in the good years that are just ahead to bring it to Pharaoh's storehouses. Store it away and guard it so there will be food in the cities. That way there will be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come in the land of Egypt. Otherwise, this famine will destroy the land.
Think of that last statement. Otherwise, this famine will destroy the land. There is no equivocation in that. He is telling him straight up, this is how it's going to go down. Better get ready. Again, Joseph's kind of drawing a line in the sand to it a little bit. This is sort of dangerous territory. You better be pretty sure where you're at. And it goes to show, again, it's just good practical advice. He's saying, this is probably how we should do it. So how does Pharaoh respond? Everybody okay with Jessica still?
Suggestions were all received by Pharaoh and his officials. So Pharaoh asked his officials, Can we find anyone like this man, so obviously filled with the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one else is as intelligent or wise as you are. Oh, you're not going to interrupt.
I know, right? I was going to. You can feel it. I'm going to wait.
You will be in charge of my court and all my people, and people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a rank higher than yours.
And pause there. So now where's Joseph?
He's up at the top.
Right there. Who's the only person in all of Egypt that's higher than Joseph now? Pharaoh. Sound familiar?
Little does Pharaoh know.
Yeah. Where were we before with Potiphar? Who was in... No, this is Potiphar.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, Potiphar. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Keep me honest. Sawtooth. Who's the second in command of Pharaoh now? Joseph. Who is in the second in command of Potiphar in his home? Joseph. Repeating theme here. What happens when the Bible repeats itself? It's trying to get our attention.
Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger.
This is the funny part. You know what a signet ring is? This is really popular in this part of the culture. It was a scarab. You ever see that movie, The Mummy? We talked about that a few weeks ago. And they had the scarabs, little scarab jewels or whatever like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why scarabs are so desirable, because a scarab is just a dung beetle. So I don't know why you'd want that on your hand, but I'd be like, I'm going to go wash my hands real quick. So
Right?
yeah, that's grody. But here's some actual artifacts from around this era. We're in 1740 BC, approximately, about 1,000 years after the pyramids have been built, about 800 years after the Sphinx has been carved. At this point, pyramids are actually starting to show wear, and the Sphinx's nose has already been broken off. This is the Egypt that Joseph lives in. Feels like it's an eternity ago, but it's really not. Oh, I got to get going. Okay, we're almost done, though. So signet rings. Okay, keep going. Let's finish it off.
He dressed him in fine linen cloth and hung a gold chain around his neck. Then he had Joseph ride in a chariot reserved for his second in command. And wherever Joseph went, the command was shouted, kneel down. So Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to him, I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or foot in the entire land of Egypt without your approval. Then Pharaoh gave Joseph a new Egyptian name. You're going to have to say that.
Zephanath Paneah.
Yeah, that guy. He also gave him a wife whose name was...
Asenath,
There you go.
or Asenath.
She was the daughter of...
Potipharah.
The priestess of On. So Joseph took charge of the entire land of Egypt.
Potipharah.
He was 30 years old when he began serving in the court of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And when Joseph left Pharaoh's presence, he inspected the entire land of Egypt. As predicted, for 7 years, the land produced bumper crops. During those years, Joseph gathered all the crops in Egypt and stored the grain from the surrounding fields in the city. He piled up huge amounts of grain, like sand on the seashore. Finally, he stopped keeping records because there was too much to measure.
Okay, we're going to stop there mostly because we're out of time. Although I love in 53 when the famine comes and all this stuff, and like, what are we supposed to do? And so Pharaoh says, basically, go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you. It's like the equivalent of like, hey, Dad, can I do this? And you're like, go ask your mother. You know, go ask Joseph. He'll know. It seems like Joseph's an overnight success like this, but we forget it's been 13 years he's been in slavery, in bondage, back in jail, out of jail. I mean, it's like, man, this guy's been through the ringer. He spent almost as much time bouncing around in and out of jail as he's been alive, you know, half and half. And it's going to be another period of time before his brothers even show back up on the scene to address this famine issue. So that's 40 and 41. We skipped a couple verses in there real quick that doesn't really have a lot of application to what we're talking about today. Everybody get the application? I wrote it on the board in case you didn't. Right? Don't mumble. Stay humble. Yes be your yes, your no be your no. Be humble in it. This week in Greek, guess what the word is? And guess what it means? Humble. Let's see again.
Tapinos.
Tapenos. Anybody remember moros in Greek? What did that mean? M-O-R-O-S? Moron. That's an easy one, right? And Debbie got last week's, what was it, to run or to flee with fear?
What was the angry one?
Raka. R-I-C-A. Last week was treximo. Treximo, to run or to run in fear. This week, tapenos, in Greek, which means to be humble. Look at your spouse or your kids. Tapenos. Be humble. Yeah? Yeah. Whoop. Okay. So that's this week's lesson. We need to do our quarterly team huddle real quick. Would you go ahead and pause that, dear, or end it, or whatever? And yeah, who does fellowship planning? Who's in charge of that? Can't be me.